What's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be putting together a powerful small form factor gaming PC, and this is one that I've been waiting for a little while now. And the big reason I'm really excited about this one is because recently Gigabyte released a low profile RTX 4060, and that's exactly what we're going to be using here. I've done a video testing this out in a much larger rig, but of course I wanted to put this in a small form factor build given that it's a low profile card, and this thing performs absolutely amazingly at 1440p. So to put this together, I will go over the parts as we're building, and I'll also leave links in the description here. I would have loved to go a bit smaller with the case, but it would have taken about a month to get the one that I want. And of course, I still ordered it, so yeah, we can do another build later on, and we'll probably use a more beefier CPU with that one. But for now, I think this thing is going to put down some amazing performance. But before we get into the build, I do want to mention that this video is brought to you by URCD Keys. Now, I've actually been using this site for a long time now. They do offer PC games from Steam, Uplay, Ubisoft. They even offer Microsoft applications like Office. But the main reason that I use the site is for their Windows 10 Pro OEM keys. These are activation keys that you can pick up really cheap, and right now at checkout, if you use code ETA, you can get 30% off, and this 30% discount will be going on until the end of August. So with this discount, you can pick one of these Windows 10 Pro activation keys up for $15.58. And don't forget, you can use PayPal to check out on their website. I just did this build here. I need to activate Windows. I'm going to head over to my updates and security. We're going to go to activation. As you can see, I've got Windows 10 Pro, but it's not activated. So I'm going to change product key. I'm going to paste it in here, choose next, choose activate, and Windows is now activated. We're ready to go. My warning is totally gone, and basically that's it. They'll email your code once your payment is processed, and that's basically it. If you're interested in picking up cheap Windows 10 keys for your new PC builds, I'll leave a link in the description. So one of the most important things when it comes to building a small form factor gaming PC is going to be your case. And there's not a lot on the market right now that support a low profile GPU. Hopefully that changes with the introduction of these low profile RTX cards. But what we have here is the SKTC A10, coming in at 7.3 liters. These can be had for pretty cheap over on AliExpress, or you can pick them up for a little more on Amazon. And keep in mind, they offer a black and a silver version. And when it comes to the motherboard, RAM, storage, and CPU for this build, I actually opted to use a few things that I already had laying around. These offer some great performance, and the motherboard here is an ROG Strix B550. Obviously, Mini ITX. This is actually one of my favorite B550 boards. Works out really well. I've installed a 2TB Aorus 7000 series NVMe SSD. RAM is going to be handled by 16GB of Aorus RGB RAM. This is DDR4 running at 4400 MHz. And when I was initially planning for this build, I was originally going to go with a AM5 platform, so we'd use DDR5 RAM, different motherboard, and of course a Ryzen 7000 series CPU. But I've got this 5600X, which offers great performance when it comes to gaming, and I think it's going to pair up really well with the RTX 4060 low profile. Another reason I strayed away from Ryzen 7000 was cooling. There's just not enough room inside of this case for an AIO, and of course going with something like a 7700 would have been awesome. It definitely would have upped the performance of this small form factor build. And maybe in my next one I will go Ryzen 7000, but I think Ryzen 5000 is still very relevant. It's going to keep the cost down, and we can actually cool this little CPU very efficiently with an air cooler. We don't need a big AIO for this thing here, and I think with a small form factor build, this is going to offer plenty of performance. So I've got the storage, RAM, and CPU installed in this Mini ITX board. Now it's time to tackle the cooling system. And for this, I actually had a few different low-profile AM4 coolers to choose from, but I went with the ID Cooling IS47K. And as you can see, it's set up a little funky. We've got that fan on the bottom, and basically the air is pushed up through the cooler, but we're going to reverse this inside of the case. That way we kind of draw air in like a regular CPU cooler. Plus, I'm going to be adding a larger fan on the top. That way I don't need a bunch of case fans. We can actually push a lot of air over the motherboard and just get some ventilation inside of the case itself. But I personally really do like this cooler for low profile builds. It definitely gives a really clean look. So there's really not a lot to this case here, but we do have a lot of ventilation with those drilled holes. It's made of steel, and it does support Mini ITX, obviously, that's what we have here. But you could also use a Mini ATX if you wanted to. We're also going to need a way to power everything up, and with that low profile RTX 4060, it does need one 8-pin connector. This case only supports a flex power supply, and a lot of them on the market don't have an extra 8-pin connector. but I found this one on Amazon. It's kind of a no-name, definitely has some heft to it, and they state that it's a 600 watt power supply. I wouldn't trust it at 600 watts, but we're not going to be pulling anywhere close to that with this build. I think we'll have a maximum of around 280 watts in total, but this is a fully modular power supply with some really nice cabling. I think I'll be able to make this look really nice once everything's installed. And yeah, it's going together pretty well. Now, I don't have the GPU installed just yet, but I wanted to see, what kind of cable management I could do in here. But having that modular power supply really does help out. I mean, it just cleans everything up really nicely. So we're getting to the end of the build here. There's a few odds and ends I still need to do, but the main claim to fame for this is going to be this Low Profile RTX 4060. This is the Gigabyte 8 gig overclock edition. I think it looks really good. Obviously, we've got a very small form factor here. It is a dual slot. It supports 4 displays, and since it's an RTX 4060, we do need to add extra power. We've got one 8-pin over here. We'll go ahead and slot this right in, and it would have been really nice if this case was about an inch shorter, but this is what I could come up with on short notice, and there's a few little things that I wanted to do here, like add a 120mm fan over that cooler just to be able to draw air into this case. And once I did that, it turned out looking something like this. I added an in-win RGB 120mm fan here just to push some air over that cooler, plus it'll pull air in from the side panel, and in turn, get some air in this case and keep everything nice and chilly, hopefully. I've got to go ahead and get the operating system installed. I'm going to go with Windows 11 Pro, all of my drivers updated, everything like that, but I did want to give you a look at this with the side panel on. And of course, if you're not into RGB, you don't need to use it. It's totally up to you. I just had this fan that fit in here really nicely, and I figured I'd go ahead and throw it in for a little bit extra. But I'm going to get everything updated, get everything installed, and we'll see what this thing can do. Alright, so I've been up and running for a little while now. I've run some tests on this CPU just to see if we're overheating, and the temps are actually much better than I thought they'd be. It's only the 5600X, so we've got 6 cores, 12 threads, but it does run it up to around 78 watts in the system, the way it's set up right now. And of course, we've got that RTX 4060. And I gotta say, this little machine can definitely put down some amazing performance, even at 1440p. Here's Doom Eternal, 1440p, Ultra. We're not using any resolution scale, and I'm seeing an average of around 81 FPS. Now, I did want to go into this game at 4K, but it really does kind of fall on its face with this RTX 4060, especially at those Ultra settings. I'm sure maybe at medium you could do 4K with some resolution scale, but I'm totally fine with 1440p. I mean, heck, I'd be fine with Ultra 1080 on a machine like this, but we've got a little more power than that, because even Cyberpunk 2077 with that 2.0 update runs at 1440p. High settings, albeit we are using DLSS set to balance right now, but it still looks really good and plays just fine. I mean, this is really good performance for such a small form factor unit, coming in at around 7 liters, a little over 7.3 I think this case was. Not bad if you ask me, but the next thing I wanted to take a look at were just some benchmarks that I ran using 3D Mark. Here we have Firestrike coming in with a 23,780, really great on these synthetics. And the next one I ran was Time Spy, and we got a 9,865. Now, temps were something that I was worried about, but with that 120mm fan drawing air in from the side of that case, I didn't see any kind of thermal throttling. The maximum temps that I saw while gaming at 1440p were 74 degrees Celsius. Now, I'm sure we could get this thing a lot hotter by stressing out all 6 cores and 12 threads for an extended period of time, but under everyday normal use and 1440p gaming, the cooling system I opted to use works great for that 5600X. Here's Forza Horizon 5, 1440p, Ultra. We averaged 109 FPS with this game, and I do think we could go to 4K with it, dropping it down to high settings as opposed to Ultra. But again, just like Cyberpunk and even Doom, I'm totally fine with a 1440p resolution on this small form factor PC. I also wanted to test out The Last of Us Part 1, and this was really surprising. Now with this, we are using some resolution scale, but we're at high settings 1440p. You can see in some situations it gets real close to that 60 FPS mark. It tries to keep it up. Lowest I saw was 61 FPS through my gameplay with this, and on average, through outdoor and indoor gameplay, we averaged 72 FPS across the board. And finally, we've got Elden Ring 1440p, maxed out, locked at 60 FPS. This is one of those games that really does take a toll on the CPU, and this 5600X can definitely truck through. If you take a look at Afterburner, you see it does jump up to around 75 watts in some cases, but it still stays nice and cool. Overall, really impressed with the performance this thing's putting out, and I'm really glad to see some of these low profile RTX cards. Now, there are smaller cases on the market. We can do a much smaller build than this, but getting those cases does take a while, so definitely stay tuned to the channel. I would love to pair this card up with something like the Ryzen 7700 just to see what we could get out of it in a small form factor build. But until then, if you're interested in putting something like this together, I will leave some links in the description. And if there's anything else you want to see running, just let me know in the comments below. But that's it for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.